Township. Visit
This is Game Night with Josh Hennig.
It's good!
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
And he scored!
Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Josh Hennig.
Welcome to the final Friday of March. Yes, it is the final Friday of the month of March. Coming up in just a few days, it will officially be April, which means we are that much closer to the NFL draft and the summer and then training camp. It's crazy how this offseason just slowly matriculates us back into football season. That's part of the reason why we're talking some football today on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. We got Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press. His latest mock draft is out. We'll ask him about the mock, get his perspective on what he is hearing so far, and we'll ask him. Diana Rossini is reporting that there is an uptick in league circles of people wanting to ban the tush push. Is that real or not? We'll ask Rob Maaddi coming up in about 20 minutes from now. As always, you guys can join the conversation. 609-403-0973. Your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. And we are live on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. The countdown is on to the NFL draft. And the reason why we're starting there is because I don't think that we have talked enough about the upcoming draft. Okay? This draft is arguably going to potentially be another linchpin in the Hall of Fame resume of Howie Roseman. The reason I say that is because the Philadelphia Eagles are pretty much guaranteed to not stay at 32nd overall in some capacity or another. The likelihood is that they will probably either trade up or trade out to get more picks. This is a draft that is very deep in some of the positions that the Philadelphia Eagles need the most. This is a deep draft when it comes to interior defensive linemen, edge rushers. It is also a deep draft with the offensive line. So if you are the Philadelphia Eagles, it's not as important to panic and say, I got to get this guy or else. This is not the kind of draft, number one. Number two, you have a massive amount of players already on your team that you have to pay in a few years, over the next few years, I should say. So if you look at the positions that they need, right? You look around and you realize there is a ton of very, very good defensive linemen in this draft. Whether it's a Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, a Kenneth Grant from Michigan, a Derek Harmon from Oregon. The idea being that you could either let the draft come to you, or you could always trade out of the first round and let somebody fall into the second. Now, the difference is that the last time you traded out of the 32nd pick, you were trading with a team that wanted Lamar Jackson, that being the Baltimore Ravens. And they got a little desperate. They gave you arguably more draft capital than more draft capital than you probably should have gotten for that pick, right? You had a team that was desperate to get a guy. You took advantage of him. I think in this draft, it's not going to be like that. I think you're going to get probably a little bit more equitable if you trade out. Now, there's always a scenario that you could trade up. To me, though, there's only a couple of players I would actually trade up for. I don't know how many of them I am that desperate to go get, though. I think this is the kind of draft that you can watch and wait for the draft to play out, because we know 2 quarterbacks are being drafted in the top 10 in some capacity. So that is going to knock guys down the list in some way or another. There's a lot of speculation out there that a 3rd quarterback will be picked in the 1st round, potentially Jackson Dart. So now you have 3 players who are being pushed down the board. Then you got to ask yourself, does the off-the-field speculation, assumptions, presumptions about guys like James Pierce Jr. of Tennessee and Walter Nolan of Ole Miss, does that push them down as well? And then you always have the question about the small school guy versus the big school guy, right? You know, a guy like Gray Zabel, who is an interior offensive lineman from North Dakota State, is he a guy that a team falls in love with? Or does a team instead say, I'm going Tyler Booker from Alabama because he went to Alabama and I like his tape better, or I like who he played against better? So there's a lot of moving parts that could happen in this draft. And that's why the 32nd overall pick is fascinating, because if you are the Eagles, you could argue that you don't have to move. You can just let the draft come to you and you can pick whoever's left. And remember, the greatest value of the 32nd pick is that any player drafted in the 1st round has an extra year of control you have on their contract. So you can keep them on board and let them have 1 extra year to prove. That's why the Packers, for example, traded up to get Jordan Love years ago, because they wanted that extra year of evaluation, because they knew that Aaron Rodgers was going to be a guy that they were going to hang on to beyond Jordan Love being drafted. And obviously that strategy worked out very well for them. And I thought it was interesting when I was listening to Andrew DeCecco talk with Mike Gill earlier today on the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. DeCecco said very, very clearly that he believes the Eagles are going to emphasize the trenches. And that's why, for me, I think there's a handful of players, knowing Philadelphia, that I am saying you have to target these guys. Number 1 on that list, I mentioned his name earlier, is Walter Nolan. He is a guy that is highly regarded, but he has some off-the-field issues, some allegations that, you know, it depends on who you ask, right? But the Eagles have a history of evaluating these guys. Remember, Philadelphia has not had any player in trouble in almost a decade. So they have done a great job at evaluating guys like Jalen Carter. They proved that they know what they're doing. And there are reports out there that some teams have removed Walter Nolan from their draft boards altogether because some teams deem him high risk. Now, again, Jalen Carter should have been the number 1 overall pick. And he dropped in the draft because of a drag racing incident that resulted in someone getting into an accident and dying. Now, he did not cause the accident, but he was indirectly involved. Okay? The problem with Nolan is the character concerns are a little bit more of a fluid conversation. It's not like we have a specific incident like what happened with Jalen Carter to point to with him. So maybe the issue is a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more controversial, maybe a little bit more questionable, right? And Walter Nolan, for whatever it's worth, did not do a great job at selling himself to teams during this draft process so far. At Indianapolis, there was some speculation that he did not always interview well. That when he was asked questions about his high school days and why he left Texas A&M to go to Ole Miss, the off-the-field stuff, all those subjects, I should say, my bad, came up, and he did not give great answers. Now, again, if the Eagles do their investigating, I'm going to trust them. Now, other players on the defensive line I do like in this draft. Kenneth Grant of Michigan. Makes a lot of sense what the Eagles like to do. Also, Grant is used to being a number 2 D tackle on a line because he was the number 2 tackle at Michigan next to Mason Graham, who will probably be a top 5 pick as Graham. So Grant, you could argue, should be a guy the Eagles look at. Another guy the Philadelphia Eagles could look at, Darius Alexander of Toledo, a phenomenal athlete who, remember, went to the same school as Quinyon Mitchell. So the Eagles have already looked at him previously. And one of the guys I like in this draft a lot is Alfred Collins. I think he is one of those Jordan Davis-style players, but maybe he could be better than Jordan Davis. Because one of the problems with Jordan Davis was I think that when you draft him in the first round, you're creating an environment where you're like, oh, he's going to be great. He's going to be, and he hasn't been what you thought he was going to be. All right. When it comes to the pass rushers, a lot of people love James Pierce Jr. of Tennessee, but I'm not sure he's going to fall all the way to you. So that's why, for me, the guys I'm closely looking at for Philadelphia that could be available later in the draft. Okay, a guy like Landon Jackson of Arkansas, a guy like Ashton Gillette of Louisville, Jared Ivey of Ole Miss. I'm a big fan of Kyle Kennard, but these are all guys who are probably round 2, round 3, particularly round 4 draft picks. So I don't know if one of the premier edge rushers will fall to you. Another position you have to have a conversation about is tight end. Now, I doubt Philadelphia is going to be able to get either Tyler Warren of Penn State or Colston Loveland of Michigan. I think those two guys will be gone probably for the 20th pick in the draft. So that leaves another group of players, and that's why I look at Gunnar Helm of Texas, Elijah Arroyo of Miami. These are two guys who are big bodies, willing blockers, able blockers, and I think that if you are legitimately considering whether it's sooner or later moving on from Dallas Goedert, that has to be the kind of player you're looking for. Someone who is big, someone who is physical, someone who could do the inline blocking. Because you just signed Saquon Barkley to a deal. You got to bring in a tight end who's going to be a willing blocker. That's why I like those two guys. And if you're maybe saying, look, historically Philadelphia has gotten guys later in the draft like Brent Selleck, maybe that is the conversation that you have about a guy from Georgia, by the way, Ben Urasek, the tight end. Not as gifted as a Brock Bowers, not as elite of a talent coming out of college like a Dallas Goedert, but he is a very capable tight end and athlete. And then the fourth position, I think the Eagles need to target in the draft in some capacity or another. They need more depth at linebacker. So they need to have a serious conversation about 3 players. Number one, you have to talk about Carson Schlesinger of UCLA. He was a player who was a very good impact defender on a team that was not very good this year. So it's about deciphering between the talent around him, which was not very good, and him, the talent, which is not always easy for teams to do. You could go back to Georgia, okay? Mondon Jr. Is that a player that you consider for this defense as a depth player? And then the other guy you have to have a conversation about is you have to ask the question, do you take seriously what Oklahoma State did 2 years ago and not what happened last year against them? Because if you do, Nick Martin and Colin Oliver, both linebackers from Oklahoma State, are draft prospects that you might want to consider in the 2nd or 3rd round. So those are the kind of players I'm looking at least, for the Eagles to target in the draft. We'll ask Rob Maaddi his thoughts on the draft and more coming up here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. And we are live on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. Before we hit the break, though, one more point on the NFL and the draft, which is, by the way, 27 days away. Hear all the draft coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN. I think that for the Eagles, as I said, Howie is not going to stand pat with what he has. I feel very comfortable guaranteeing you that when you know the Eagles' history and you look at what Howie Roseman has done in past years, and you see that he has 4 fifth-round picks, he's going to trade 1 or 2 of them. Now, whether those picks are bundled together, whether those picks are packaged with a 4th or 3rd round pick to move up or down somewhere, I feel very comfortable saying, because of Howie Roseman's experience with the draft and working the system, he is going to find a way to move around in this draft. And that's why, for me, I'm not 100% sold on the idea that 32, 64, and 96 are where Philadelphia is going to pick in the first 100 picks. I think Philadelphia is going to move from one of those spots. And they will not be drafting 5 guys in the first round, in the 5th round, I should say. We're going to have more next. Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press. Josh Hennig hanging out with you here on 97.3 ESPN. It's a Friday, the final Friday of March. How are we feeling out there? It's supposed to be a beautiful weather weekend. Hope everyone out there is having a great Friday. We'll be back with more football talk next on 97.3 ESPN.
With GMF financing to qualified buyers excludes Traverse and Corvette excludes prior sales.
It's back! It's Bennett Chevy's most popular event, March Markdowns, for the entire month of March. So get to Bennett right now for savings up to 20%. That's right, you get up to 20% off. That's because Bennett sells new Chevys at the true GM supplier employee price, plus gives you all the rebates. So get to Bennett Chevy now and save even more with available 0% financing. Looking for used? Bennett Chevy is South Jersey's largest certified dealer with great savings on every single one. And during March Markdowns, you'll get a minimum $10,000 for the worst clunker towards any pre-owned in stock. That's at least $10,000. Imagine how much you'll get for a good trade. And our non-commissioned sales team is the best. They're paid on your satisfaction, not your budget and how much you spend. So everybody gets our famous no pressure, friendly, and helpful service. Together, let's drive during March Markdowns at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
When you're hiring, have you ever felt like you're missing out on meeting great candidates? Well, they're not hard to find when you go to ZipRecruiter. ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day. People who are actively looking for jobs like yours. So it's easy to find the right person fast. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Jake from State Farm. I just beat my running PR, so I'm celebrating with the Banana Bonanza smoothie.
Hey, and you can keep celebrating when you create an affordable price just for you by bundling your home and auto with the State Farm Personal Price Plan. Go bananas.
I will. Hey, make it a large.
Bundling, just another way to save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from IQ Bar. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at eatiqbar.com/policy/terms of service.
Most protein bars are packed with sugar, carbs, and unpronounceable ingredients. There's a much better option. I'm Will, and I crafted IQ Bar plant protein bars with clean, functional, delicious ingredients to empower doers like you with superior brain and body fuel.
Now you can get 20% off all IQ Bar products plus free shipping when you text EAT to 64,000. That's EAT to 64,000.
This is the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network.
Progressive presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. The Flyers host the Buffalo Sabres at the Wells Fargo Center on Saturday. Philadelphia won its first game since the firing of John Tortorella, outscoring the Canadiens 6-4. The Phillies win on opening day, 7-4 at the Washington Nationals in extra innings. It's an off day for the Phillies. Tomorrow, Jesus Luzardo gets the start for the Phillies, while it'll be Jake Irvin on the mound for the Nationals. In the NBA, the 76ers have lost 6 straight games and 9 of their last 10, and host the Miami Heat at Wells Fargo on Saturday night. The Heat have won 3 straight games. Philadelphia Eagles added Greg Austin to its coaching staff as assistant offensive line coach. Austin will work under Jeff Stoutland. Bundle auto and home, renters, or condo and save with Progressive. Online at progressive.com. I'm Bill Banks on 97.3 ESPN.
It happens more than you think. A customer wants, needs the goods and services your business offers. No matter how hard they try, they can't find you, but they find your competitor right there at the top of the results page.
And even if they do find your website, when they click, it's like a ghost town.
Hello?
Outdated, not compelling, and perhaps worse, it has information that's not accurate.
Y2K? But how do you fix that? At Town Square Interactive, we have the tools to help you maximize your online presence. Just go to mylocalcustomers.com and start by getting a free local customer analysis.
This online tool will show you just how many customers in your area you could be reaching. To get in front of those customers, we will build a premium website for your business.
One that shows up well in web searches and converts website clicks into phone calls, appointments, and foot traffic.
It's simple, it's fast, and it's affordable. Go to mylocalcustomers.com and get started by getting your free local customer analysis today.
Good afternoon. With your South Jersey weather forecast, I'm Joe Kelly. Could see a little rain this evening across South Jersey, a low of 55, but it'll all be forgotten tomorrow when we'll have lots of sunshine and a temperature pushing 80 degrees. Oh, yeah. The outlook for Sunday, partly sunny, cooler, 68. And back to work Monday, blah, some rain in the forecast. High temperature Monday expected to be about 69. Again, the highlight tomorrow, sunny, high near 80. That's your South Jersey weather. I'm Joe Kelly.
Something good to know from First Bank of Sea Isle City. We have all of today's innovative banking products just like the big banks, but we offer something they can't. A personal community focus. Let's get you started with Bill Pay. You save time when you pay your bills online. It's fast, easy, and convenient. First Bank of Sea Isle City. A community bank that delivers more for you every day. Personal service, today's technology, from the people who truly care. Learn more at firstbankseaisle.com.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
We'll check back in the text board a little bit later this hour, 609-403-0973. Your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Yes, it's free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. You can listen to all of the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 this weekend through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, as well as 97.3 ESPN FM. Let's get back to the football conversation. Mock Draft 2.0 is now up at apnews.com from Rob Maaddi, AP senior NFL writer, joins us here on 97.3 ESPN, as does each week. Rob, welcome back in. How you doing on this Friday?
Be doing a whole lot better if I can watch the Phillies or any games on MLB.TV. Like, what the hell is wrong with this freaking app? It's insane. And I was even on a phone with a technician for 35 minutes. I've never had a problem where a technician, wherever they are in some other foreign country, trying to help you, walk you through, couldn't help. He not only could he not help me, he was like, well, we're going to escalate it and resolve it and then email
Escalate
you.
it.
Yeah,
They're going to escalate it.
At what point are you? Yeah, at what point are you going to email me and tell me you resolved my issue, man? Like, come on. It's day 2 of baseball season. I can't watch any out of town games, and I'm jonesing for some baseball other than whatever's on ESPN or I don't even know who carries baseball anymore. Oh yeah, wait, we're here for football. Sorry, Josh.
Yeah, football.
I'm just going off, man. I'm not happy right now.
Rob Maaddi, Baseball Hall of Fame voter right here on 97.3 ESPN. Trying to watch baseball. Well, I did want to ask you about the football. In all seriousness.
While filling out a mock draft. Yeah, while doing mock draft 2.0, at least it didn't distract me from my mock draft because I couldn't watch any baseball.
Well, I want to start with this because the name I was talking about before you came on was Walter Nolan. And he's an interesting character because guys from NFL films like Greg Cosell say that he moves like a Jalen Carter or an Ndamukong Suh, okay? That's very high praise for any prospect, right? But he's got the character concerns. But Rob, when anyone wants to tell you what the character concerns are, it's this vague, well, it goes back to high school and he's a young guy and it's maturity and he doesn't want to answer questions about what happened at Texas A&M. So how much of the whole character concern is a legitimate issue with Walter Nolan, and how much of it is maybe teams, shall I say, willing to let him drop down the board to them in the first round?
I always find it interesting, Josh, when people talk about character concerns because you're trying to judge young men based on some decisions that they may have made as teenagers or based on some kind of issues that they may have had a couple of years ago or early on in their journey as a college football player. So I don't know Walter Nolan enough. I don't know him at all. I didn't speak to him at the combine. So I don't know him to be able to speak about his character. And from what I hear from various teams is there may be some folks who are concerned, but others who aren't. And how guys interview with one team can be interpreted differently by people in the room on another team. And you see that with someone like Shedeur Sanders. You see that with various guys, how the perception comes across. So, and there's also at this time of year, we know this, there's a lot of misinformation or guys that are being reporters are being misled or things are being said. People are putting some things out there without really checking the sourcing or anything along those lines. There's a Rays walk-off home run as we speak. So I actually had a I had to pay for the whatever it was to get local games. But anyway, I digress. So I think Walter Nolan is a guy who's going to be sort of a plug-and-play player, as I said in my mock draft, right? He's a guy who can come in and be an immediate impact player. Those who are judging it, like Ndamukong Suh is a potential Hall of Fame player. Jalen Carter could be he was in consideration for Defensive Player of the Year, a guy who received All-Pro votes and certainly a Pro Bowl caliber player. Like, that's high praise, and it's hard to compare somebody coming in to two guys who are one who's established and moved on and one who is really setting himself up to have a great career. But I had him going to, I think it's the Bengals at 17, and especially after what they've done in this offseason, Cincinnati, they bring him back. They're bringing back their offense. They've invested heavily there. They need to hit on their defensive players in the draft. We still don't have a resolution for Trey Hendrickson, and I feel a big defensive tackle, somebody like Walter Nolan, who may have some concerns to some people, but not others. And it's also like, hey, Jalen Carter had some of those. He had there was reason for teams to be concerned
really
about
quick,
Jalen Carter.
if I could jump in really quick, I said this before you came on, Rob. Jalen Carter, we had a specific incident, right? There was and it became how did you interpret that incident? The Walter Nolan thing is more like this vague, eye of the beholder. How do you translate it? How do you interpret it? Because in today's world, I mean, let's be realistic, you can interpret anything and make something out of nothing in everyday life. I mean, you can go to the store and make character judgments on people that might not even be true, but they had one bad day, So I don't know how much of the Walter Nolan thing is legitimate when there are reports, though, that some teams are saying we're taking him off our draft board. And I'm just like, for what? Can someone tell me what we're doing it for in a world where Johnny Manziel went in the first round?
and sometimes some teams may say they're taking him off their draft board, hoping that other teams follow suit because they really want him. Like that's the kind of jockeying back and forth. Right. I haven't heard anything definitive about what the concerns are regarding Walter Nolan that would eliminate him. I felt comfortable enough to put him at 17. Hey, he can drop. We've seen guys drop, right? Like look at Warren Sapp and Randy Moss way back when, 2 Hall of Fame players. Wasn't it Laramie Tunsil who dropped several years? Was it Tunsil several years ago?
Yeah, for doing something that is completely legal in today's world, but back then was illegal.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't until someone actually says what those concerns are, what Walter Nolan did, why they feel the way they feel about him. I think teams are always going to look at that talent, and there's always going to be that team that believes that talent trumps, and you put him in the right environment and surround him with the right people, and he'll be fine.
We're talking with Rob Maaddi, senior NFL writer and reporter for the Associated Press, joins us each week here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig here in the Ocean Casino Resort Studios, as Rob Maaddi is still regretting paying for cable to watch the Rays have a walk-off game winning whatever it was. I'm not watching the game. I only know what you told me. I'll watch the highlights.
Solo home ninth.
By the way, I want more information about this MLTV problem. You can text me later because I have MLB TV and I use it mostly, though, to watch the game, like condensed games at night. So for those who don't know, if you've ever watched MLB Network's Quick Pitch, instead of paying for cable for Quick Pitch, just get MLB TV. They have the same Quick Pitch condensed games all in a row. You can just hit play and they just run through the ball. So that's part of my nighttime routine. It's put me. I fell asleep to that last night, Rob.
and yours is working?
My app's working.
Okay, because there was like a nationwide issue yesterday that I assumed was why
I saw that. Yeah, but then I went on my app last night and it worked perfectly fine. So I don't know what's going on.
Man, they just don't like me, man. Must be. Must be
like
problems with NFL guys trying to follow baseball.
Something like that. So to your mock draft 2.0, Rob, now you have the Eagles taking an offensive lineman. And I'm less about who it was, which is Josh Simmons, the offensive line from Ohio State. But for you, why were you looking at offensive line at that point instead of defensive line at that point? Because this is a draft with a lot of depth on the D line.
Yeah, and the way how he thinks and feels is most likely going to be one of the guys in the trenches, right? And it depends on how the board shakes out. I had a lot of those top defensive linemen going ahead of 32. So I did a mock draft 1.0 where I had various trade scenarios. I wanted to do a mock draft 2.0, knowing that I have a third one coming up. So I did the 2.0 no trades, where teams stay put. I don't believe the Eagles will be picking at 32. They'll either move up or move back. That's the Eagles' MO. they will move around. They're not going to stay at, and I had them moving up in my 1.0. I'll have them moving around in 3.0. If they stayed at 32 and the board shook out the way I had it shaking out, Josh Simmons is a guy who he could potentially be a top 15 if he wasn't coming off the knee injury. The Eagles have that luxury of being able to, they don't need an immediate starter. They can bring somebody in who could be an eventual successor to Lane Johnson. Whenever Lane Johnson moves on, he can play the tackle spot. So he's played both tackle spots, and I just saw value there. Now, if he's off the board at that point, I may have looked at some of the other, but I had a lot of defensive linemen going. I think that's where I had them taking Mike Green in my 1.0, the edge rusher out of Marshall. I think if I had to make a decision right now, depending on how the board looks, if they stayed at 32, it's probably 60, 55, 45, 60, 40 defensive line versus offensive line. But I think those are the two positions. I don't see them going a different direction. And they could certainly trade back and accumulate even more assets than they already have. But they also have enough assets to where if Howie likes somebody, he's not afraid to move up, and he'll go make a push for a top 15, top 12 guy if he wanted to.
Let's go to the top of your draft. Stay in the NFC East. I got to admit, Rob, I was surprised that you have Shedeur Sanders going 3 to the Giants. I've kind of taken the whole Russell Wilson, Winston signings as them sending an indirect message that they don't love this year's draft and that maybe they're the kind of team that says, look, we understand that Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, and maybe even Jackson Dart will go in the first round, but we're going to wait until later in the draft to maybe get like a Dylan Gabriel or a Tyler Shock or Will Howard or something, and then let that guy kind of just like hang out in the background. I don't know. I'm surprised because I feel like if you take a quarterback 3rd overall, you're kind of saying this guy is starting sooner than later.
I think, and I did it from this perspective, Shedeur Sanders is job security for the GM and the coach, for Dable and Shane in this regard. With Wilson and Winston, and it's Russell Wilson should be the starter. Jameis Winston started in Cleveland, then eventually even lost his job to DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So Russell Wilson's coming in there on a 1-year contract to be the starter. James got a 2-year deal to be the backup, to be a mentor. Shedeur Sanders, in a way, is job security because you can't fire a GM and a coach who are trying to develop a rookie quarterback if he doesn't play until the final 2 or 3 games. So I had it from that perspective of you bring him in, you let Russell Wilson play out the season. What are you going to do? 6-11? Maybe you bench Russell at 6-9 or however, whatever the record is at that point. Shedeur gets a couple games. Now, we know John Mara does not like to fire and turn over, and he was willing to give Dable and Shane another chance after a dismal season last year. If they're able to convince him, hey, we really like what we've seen from Shedeur in practice, and we wanted to make sure that he's ready to play and he needed some seasoning, and you put him in at the end of the season, can you really then bring in a new coach and want to install a new system for him to learn? It's like he's a rookie all over again then in year 2. So I only did it from that perspective. I think a lot of people are kind of looking at it in either way. Like Wilson and Winston doesn't rule out Shedeur or any other quarterback. They could do Jackson Dart maybe. I don't have him going in the first round. He could very well be there in the second round, though Cleveland's ahead of him, and he could go there. Or all right, we don't like the QBs this year. We'll hold out hope for next year. But then they're going to have to hope they're a top 5 pick, and they already cost themselves this year by winning one of those games towards the end of the season that cost them an opportunity to be 2 or 1. And then you've got a lost season with a head coach and a GM who are going to end up gone. And yeah, maybe you get a stud. Certainly, you probably could have a stud, whether it's Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter if he's there, whoever it is of those two guys. But that was my rationale.
I've said numerous times that to me, Rob, the problem in the Giants is not Dable. The problem is the GM. And I never call for someone to lose their job, but to me, I don't view them as a package deal. I know historically it's a package deal with the coach and the GM, but to me, I think the way Shane has managed things, and there was no need to sign both Wilson and Winston. You could have signed one or the other and then drafted a quarterback, but obviously these guys are more worried about saving their jobs than they are about doing what's best for the team long term, but I digress. I want to ask you this.
That really didn't make sense. You're
Yeah.
right, though. Like Wilson and Winston, the two, why are you signing both of those guys? To me, that really didn't make sense.
It felt like more of the Aaron Rodgers domino, right? Doesn't it feel like it's like they're saying, see, we're really not interested in Rodgers now because we brought in Russell and Jameis. See, we're really serious about not having Rodgers.
And Aaron Rodgers shouldn't be interested in the Giants unless he had absolutely no other option and wanted to continue playing. And I don't foresee that. The Steelers are the ideal fit for him. I mean, obviously, other than the Vikings, but does he really want to be on a Vikings team where they got J.J. McCarthy, who's at least with the Steelers, when he goes there, not if, I still feel it's a when. Likely a two-year opportunity to win and win now and win right away.
Well, Rodgers and the Steelers had a nice date the other day, and they spent 6 hours over appetizers. Hope it was really good for them. And they're having commitment issues. They're having trouble committing to each other for a real relationship. They don't want to change the social media status yet, so they're taking time to process it. Rob.
Yeah, and you know what? From Aaron Rodgers' standpoint, I would rather him take longer to decide whether he's playing or not playing than retire and then 2 months down the line, because we've seen that how many times now with how many different people go, you know what? I got the itch. It's training camp. I want to come in. I want to play. Brett Favre did that a lot.
And remember, Rodgers didn't like when Favre did that, so he shouldn't do it to anybody else.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like him taking his time is understandable. And I know there's a lot of impatience out there and people taking shots at Aaron Rodgers. Let's be honest. Everybody people love to take shots at Aaron Rodgers, just like they like to take shots at Hulk Hogan now, but that's a whole other issue.
Listen, my only problem with the Hulkster is how can I try your beer if you don't have it in New Jersey? That's my only thing with the Hulkster.
Is that right? If I run into one,
Rob, it's in New York. It's in New York State. I looked it up the other day. I was curious. I was like, it's in New York State, but it's not in New Jersey. How does that even work?
That's funny. All right. We'll check him out. Well, I'll head down to Hogan's Hangout, or I forget what it's called, his bar. I've been there, seen him.
Yeah.
Holding court on Mondays. It's a good time.
Rob, before I let you go, speaking of people who like to get targeted by people, awkward transition, but all right, here we go. I know there are some people who like to speak ill of Diana Rossini because of her reporting. Right now, she's getting a lot of flack as a report about the tush push, that apparently there's growing momentum of teams willing to vote against it. I just wanted to ask you, how much validity do you give to that report? Do you think that is there a growing momentum of teams that are looking a way to get rid of the Eagles' tush push? Or is that just people saying they're against it, but when push comes to shove, they won't vote against it?
I don't think you'll get the 24 votes. I really don't. I don't think it'll even come close to the 24 votes. I'll be very surprised. I'm heading to Palm Beach on Sunday for the NFL League meetings. I'll say this. I'll be shocked if the tush push is banned. And I'll save the rest for a text message off the air.
Listen, again, I'm not trying to throw Diana under the bus. I know for a fact she's one of the hardest working people in the business, and that
I know Diana very well. Voter for the she votes for the AP awards, added her to the roster 2 years ago, maybe, and does a great job, and we get along great. So it's just that there's different there's so many ways of interpreting information that's available to you.
Yeah, and and listen, I don't know her personally. I've heard a lot of good stories though about her. Like I've been told a lot of good things about her by people. So I kind of get very cringy when I see people attacking her for her reporting. And
like that's happening? I haven't noticed that for today, but I haven't been on.
It's not Jordan Schultz. It's not Jordan Schultz attack levels, where like basically the entire NFL network is against Jordan Schultz. But like there is a good amount of people that every time she reports something, there's an attitude of basically like, you're not at ESPN anymore, so you don't know anything. Is
it fans, or is she getting attacked by other media?
Fringe media, I'll call it. Fringe media.
Okay, gotcha.
And I won't say who it
Jordan
is.
Schultz was okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
I mean,
understand.
Yeah, I'll text you, but like I have actually had people who cover the league to me, anonymously trash her. So, and I've kind of pushed back on them and said, "Can you give me an example of like?" And they can't really give me an example. There seems to be
That's
a
unfortunate.
vibe. Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate because we're entering a world, and I'll let you go on this, Rob. We're going on a side tangent here, but we live in a world where it's like everybody wants to be independent, right? Everybody wants to free themselves of the man, right? But then when someone free themselves of the man, it's like, you lost credibility. And it's like, well, what happened to the last 20 years of my life? It's a very, it's a very weird vibe out there,
Yeah. No, I get you. I'll say this. Diana's a friend and have a ton of respect for how hard she works. She really does. She works extremely hard.
Rob, this weekend, Faith on the Field. I know you got a very interesting conversation this weekend for FOTF.
Yeah, we had DeMario Davis going with that one this week, and just a great dude, man. One of my favorite people in the NFL, and it's crazy the success that he continues to have, like at a linebacker position in the mid-30s. That's hard to do. I know Tom Brady used to get tormented by DeMario, so that's always he's always a great conversationalist.
Faith on the Field heard Saturday and Sunday mornings right here on 97.3 ESPN. Follow Rob on the Twitter X platform at Rob Maaddi. Check out his full mock draft 2.0 at apnews.com. Rob, always appreciate you jumping on in the conversation.
Yeah, man, and hopefully I'll watch a Phillies game by the time I talk to you next.
Well, the good news is the game's tomorrow.
Yeah, they got 24 hours to fix my MLB.TV. That's all I'm giving them. All right, man. Take care.
I'll talk
Have
to you
a great
later.
Weekend.
Josh Hennig here, back at the Ocean Casino Resort Studios here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. I see you, Jeff from Ocean City. We'll get to your text and more coming up on the other side.
Something good to know from First Bank of Sea Isle City. We have all of today's innovative banking products just like the big banks, but we offer something they can't. A personal community focus. Let's get you started with Bill Pay. You save time when you pay your bills online. It's fast, easy, and convenient. First Bank of Sea Isle City. A community bank that delivers more for you every day. Personal service, today's technology, from the people who truly care. Learn more at firstbankseaisle.com.
Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, millions of men experience ED, but not everyone can access or afford treatments like Viagra. At HIMSS, our own board-certified urologist, Dr. Peter Stahl, knows this better than anyone, and he knows that HIMSS can help.
Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Stahl, Senior Vice President of Men's Sexual Health at HIMSS. I've helped many guys with ED, and it has never been more convenient to treat than it is right now, thanks to HIMSS.
Through Hims.com, you can access a full range of treatment options for ED, including daily or as-needed meds through a 100% online process. If prescribed, your medication is shipped to you for free. Find the ED treatment that fits your needs. Options at up to 95% less than the brand names when you get started at hims.com/joy. To start your free online visit and find ED treatment at up to 95% less than brand name prices, go to hims.com/joy. That's hims.com/joy for your free online visit.
Save thousands at Matt Blatt Kia. Get out of your old trade today, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Go to mattblattkianj.com for more details. That's mattblattkianj.com.
It's gotta be a
Matt Blatt Kia.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go. Shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
Workdays can be unpredictable, but your workwear shouldn't be. With the Cintas Apparel Plus program, you'll have freshly laundered garments for everyone on your team delivered every week. Cintas has workwear for just about any job imaginable, with high-performance fabrics and an uncompromising fit that stretches and moves with you. Don't leave looking and feeling good to chance. Visit Cintas.com.
Oh, I'm ready!
And get ready for the workday.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids have to sell their home. That's why I told my husband we could not put off getting life insurance any longer. An agent offered us a 10-year, $500,000 policy for nearly $50 a month. Then we called SelectQuote. SelectQuote found us identical coverage for only $19 a month, a savings of $369 a year.
Whether you need a $500,000 policy or a $5 million policy, SelectQuote could save you more than 50% on term life insurance.
For your free quote, call SelectQuote at 1-800-457-6060. That's 1-800-457-6060. Or go to SelectQuote.com. 1-800-457-6060. That's 1-800-457-6060.
SelectQuote. We shop. You save. Full details on example policies at selectquote.com/commercials.
With GMF financing, qualified buyers excludes Traverse and Corvette excludes prior sales.
It's back! It's Bennett Chevy's most popular event, March Markdowns for the entire month of March. So get to Bennett right now for savings up to 20%. That's right, you get up to 20% off. That's because Bennett sells new Chevys at the true GM supplier employee price, plus gives you all the rebates. So get to Bennett Chevy now and save even more with available 0% financing. Looking for used? Bennett Chevy is South Jersey's largest certified dealer with great savings on every single one. And during March Markdowns, you'll get a minimum $10,000 for the worst clunker towards any pre-owned in stock. That's at least $10,000. Imagine how much you'll get for a good trade. And our non-commissioned sales team is the best. They're paid on your satisfaction, not your budget and how much you spend. So everybody gets our famous no pressure, friendly, and helpful service. Together, let's drive during March Markdowns at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and on the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
All right, before we get out of here, let's get to the text board. Typical Mets fan chimes in. Didn't leave their name, but they said typical Mets fan. Says, Josh, I don't think you understand how hard it is to be a Mets fan. We get teased and teased. We get Juan Soto, and what happens? It's nothing but 3 bases loaded with a chance to win. Nothing brings us up just to slam us back down. This is really typical Mets fan. Listen, the problem with the Mets is not Soto, okay? I thought you actually made a smart move trying to get him away from the Yankees. I think the Mets' problem is they're not very good at building a well-rounded team, okay? They needed to improve their pitching. They didn't improve the pitching. They won in the postseason due to timely hitting and a favorable matchup with the Phillies and the Brewers. They didn't do anything to improve on that aside from adding Juan Soto. That's really where their problem is. I don't think the problem is Soto. I think Soto will be fine. Don't hold against him what he's done early in the year. by the end of the year, you'll be more than happy he's a Mets fan. You wouldn't be mad at the Mets, be mad at how they build their team. Jeff from Ocean City says, hey, Josh, great NFL talk tonight. Do you have any college plays for tonight and the weekend? I do, Jeff in Ocean City. And, of course, my picks are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. Use promo code DYW for the little bonus play you get from Caesars Sportsbook. I know it changes every week, so just use code DYW. All right, so here we go. Tonight on 97.3 ESPN is the final game of the Sweet 16. I think Michigan covers against Auburn. I think Michigan is a lot better team people give them credit for. 8.5 is way too big of a number for me. I also agree with Mike Gill. I like the under in the Purdue-Houston. I see either 134, 134.5 is the number at a lot of places. I think that'll be a low-scoring game. And then tomorrow, I like the over 173.5 in the Alabama-Duke game. I think those are two teams. It's going to be a sprint, right? That's probably going to be like I don't know. I foresee it being like a 90-88 kind of game. I think that's going to be a crazy high-scoring game. Those are two teams that will play a lot of defense. All right, thanks to Rob Maaddi for joining the show. Coming up next, the NCAA Tournament Sweet 16 Day 2 right here on 97.3 ESPN. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Saturday morning in the locker room with Billy Schwein, producer Nick Earnshaw, and Mike Carlin join me in the studio. The Phillies win their opener as we get closer to the Final Four of the NCAA tournament. We will cover it all. Mr. Negadelphia PJ Korda checks in, brought to you by the Galloway Pool Service. Mr. Negadelphia will give us his thoughts on the Phillies opener, the Flyers firing Tortorella, and the Eagles saying goodbye to the pep band. All that and more. It's the locker room with Billy Schwein, Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to noon on 97.3 ESPN.
All right, we are live here on my YouTube channel for the post show at Josh Hennig. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. We try to pop in here on the post show with a topic that maybe we didn't hit on during the show. And that is the Phillies this weekend, right? I wanted to get to the Phillies really quick, so I got that and another topic really to hit on, and then we'll get out of here. I think the Phillies have a really strong chance to sweep this weekend. And the reason why I bring that up is because I went back and rewatched the Phillies game late last night. And I really feel like what you saw last night was evidence that the Phillies are who the national media thinks they are. They are who the odds makers think they are. They are a resilient team. And when you have 13 strikeouts, you heard Alec Boehm say, and for those who didn't hear, I'll play the audio for you. So Alec Boehm was asked about this last night, about the hitting conditions, okay? So this is what Alec Boehm said last night.
Alec, tell people who watch this game on TV about what it's like hitting with shadows.
You can't see the ball. That's why we struck out like 30 times. So we should probably just stop playing at 4 o'clock so we can put a good product on the field for all the fans watching at home and paying money to come to the stadium. You see like how it's light, dark, light, dark, light, dark between the mound and the plate. You can't see if the ball's spinning forward, backwards, sideways, or anything.
I'm so glad that NBC Sports Philadelphia asked Alec Boehm that after the game last night, because I think that there's a perception by the fans that baseball players are supposed to be robots, that athletes are supposed to be robots, and that fans don't always understand that there might be mitigating circumstances for why you may not be successful, okay? That there might be a reason for why you're not hitting the ball that night or that day. And Alec Boehm's case, he says, look, we couldn't even see the ball, okay? He says we couldn't even see where it was going, where it was coming to. And I think it's a huge part of the conversation of the why behind the 13 strikeouts. And then they score all 7 runs from the 7th inning on. The game last night to me was an example of why this team is one of the best teams in baseball, because of their resilience. This is a team that has shown themselves more often than not to be a very resilient team. They know how to win ball games and they're going to win a ton of games this year. I said it before. I thought they were going to win 95 games. And a team that wins 95 games is a team that is also going to win games in extra innings like they did yesterday. And I think yesterday was a game that is going to put them on track for a strong start to the year. They had to go to their bullpen, but guess what? They were off today. So now they go into the weekend with Luzardo and Nola. And let's assume both of them go 6 to 7 innings each. It's fair to assume that the bullpen will be ready for those games. And both of those pitchers should pitch well this weekend. The key for this team is the fact that right now, they do not have anyone not named Luzardo, Nola, Sanchez, or Wheeler pitching until Thursday, April 3rd. That means that they are putting their best foot forward to start the year. And I'm not overly worried about the pitching staff because I think that they will figure it out. The hitters showed you last night that they are able to figure this out. And I think a big part of the conversation for the Phillies moving forward is going to be, will the hitters hit? Alec Bohm showed you last night. So did Schwarber. So did Harper. You give them enough chances, they're going to hit one of those chances. And you look at the Phillies' schedule to start the year. Aside from the series with the Dodgers, they pretty much have a straightforward month through April, where by the time they play the Mets on April 21st, they should be well above 500. Now, the Dodgers series, it'll be interesting because it's in Philadelphia and not in LA. And I am very curious to find out when they play that 4:05 game, if the Phillies, and I don't have the exact breakdown because they haven't announced that far ahead, but I'm going to assume that they are going to have Luzardo, Nola, and Sanchez for those games against the Dodgers, which is not good news for the Dodgers because now the Dodgers are one of the only teams in baseball, aside from the Phillies, that has a left-hander problem when it comes to their hitters. So if the Phillies can get the lineup fixed, which includes stop playing Brandon Marsh so much. The obsession this team has with playing Brandon Marsh is starting to get maddening. But I digress. They get the lineup figured out. They get the hitters rolling. It's going to make those games against the Dodgers and the Braves a lot easier. Because the rest of the month of April, you are playing the Rockies, not a really good baseball team. Cardinals, they're solid, not great. Giants, not the threat they used to be. Marlins, the Marlins. Then you have the Mets. And the Mets, by that point, will probably have a better grasp on who their team is. But even that team, I think Philadelphia can probably beat 2 out of 3 against them. And then you have to go on the road to Chicago. And then you come home against the Nationals. So you could very well be going into the month of May, 10 games at minimum over 500. And if you have a confident baseball team, that is going to help you when you get to May. Because May is where the real gauntlet is, okay? May, you got the Diamondbacks, you got the Rays, you got the Cleveland Guardians. Later in the month, you might be facing Paul Skeens and the Pirates. So there is a bit of a stretch of games that you want to have a buffer of a record against. Not that they're going to lose all those games, but it's hard to win every day in baseball. And if you're a team who says, hey, we're going to win about 95 games this year, 95 to 100 games, that means if you win 95 to 100 games, you are going to lose 62 to 70 games. It's just simple math. They are not going to win every game. But I thought yesterday's game was a great example for why they're going to win more games than people realize, at least locally, this year. The national media seems to think as a whole the Phillies are a much better team than the local people do. But again, sometimes you're so close to something you don't appreciate what you have. And I think yesterday was an example of the Phillies showing you, hey, appreciate what you got. You got one of the best teams in baseball. Let this season ride. Don't overreact to a team having 13 strikeouts through the first 6 innings and 19 overall. Sometimes it happens. All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching the post show right here on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. You can follow me on the Twitter X platform at Josh Hennig. And, of course, on Instagram, Joshua S. Hennig. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'm not sure if I'll be popping on here or not. Again, a lot of this stuff is dependent on life and work and so on and so forth. A man's got to sleep at some point between work, gym, running errands, more work, more errands. So thanks, everybody, for watching the post show. And no matter what, I will be back on Monday, 6 p.m., following the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle, and right here on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. Take care, everyone.